Welcome to a series of podcasts discussing series of films.
I'm Matt.
I'm Dave.
In a world inundated with prequels, sequels, spin-offs, and reboots, we ask the question,
Do we need one more? I think we do.
I think we don't. I'm super excited to talk about a movie that has very normal takes and opinions and that people will be very calm about.
People are always calm and rational when they talk about this movie.
Are we taking a quick swim through a pool of lava by opening the door to to the Snyderverse?
Yeah, well, if one is going to hold up the tectonic plates as one does in these movies, I think we have to swim through lava. I think that's part of it.
All right, I guess that's
part
fair.
of it. So this is Man of Steel.
Yes.
Welcome, guys. This is a movie I don't think we've stopped talking about the Snyderverse since it's occurred.
No, it's
like not a day that goes by we don't reference it in our regular lives. I don't think
we became friends in between Man of Steel and BVS,
Yeah.
and BVS is not something that we're covering on this series, just because
we'll probably touch on it briefly, I guess, but we're not really going to go into like
the idea is
plot
mainly
details. I guess,
we're discussing the ones that are Superman led. BVS, I would argue, is not very much a Superman-led film,
not
despite
really.
it wanting
It's definitely
to be
a Batman movie.
Yes.
Is what it is.
So Superman solo films is kind of what
and
we're
I guess
covering.
we're in this era now
And
of
Steel.
like we're tackling like how to reboot the franchise. Is
Yes.
like, I guess gonna kind of try to centrally focus this discussion as much as possible.
Which this
But there will be tangents as always.
Surely. This movie, we've basically been like Rocky montage training for this episode for like the last 10 years.
Pretty much. We've been rehearsing this episode for a very long time. I
Not
think.
to set like a high bar or say that, not to maybe set us up for failure, but like, we've had this conversation many times. And now we are going to have it again on air for people to yell at us, which I cannot wait.
This will be fun. Bring it, guys. Be nice.
Yep.
You know?
And next week we'll be talking about
Keep it
The Last
clean.
Jedi.
Yes.
No, we won't. We won't. Calm down.
We will. We're talking about The Rise of Skywalker. That's what we're.
Oh, yeah. I can't wait.
So that one wasn't controversial because everyone agreed it wasn't good.
Yeah, that one, if it was...
That didn't split a fandom in half. That one we all just went, yeah, no, this isn't fun anymore.
It was like, Rise of Skywalker was us all being like, maybe we should stop. And then a certain section of social media was like, we will never stop. And then they didn't, and they haven't. And I hope that they do. But Man of Steel, 2013, Henry Cavill, Zack Snyder, produced by Christopher Nolan.
Written by David S. Goyer and Jonathan Nolan.
That's right.
Who have sidekicked on previous Batman epics.
Yes.
Batman Begins, Dark Knight, and Dark Knight Rises.
So
even though it's mostly Nolan who writes those ones.
Yeah. So what is your relationship with Man of Steel?
So I remember being pretty hyped because obviously I had like the Dark Knight had redefined who I was as a person and was like my benchmark for cinema.
Right.
It still is in a lot of ways. But like, so yeah, I was pretty hyped for this, but also like kind of had really conflicted feelings about all the images coming out of it.
Got you.
So I remember like when the first like press like released photo of him.
Bank.
Yeah. Him like in the bank.
Yeah.
I just remember thinking like, this doesn't feel like Superman.
Okay.
But like being like still like open to like the darkness and the grittiness because I really liked how that worked with Batman. So I was still like really hyped for this to like work.
Sure.
The way that I thought, The Dark Knight had worked for me in Batman Begins and such. So I was pretty excited, but like as it got closer to this movie coming out, I got like more and more conflicted feelings about it. And I ended up not seeing it in theaters. I don't really remember why. I think I was doing theater at the time. And so I think I was just literally in a show and just did not have
the chance.
The time. I was like in school and I was doing like 20 units and stuff. And so it wasn't like a conscious decision to do it. I just pretty much had missed it. And then like when the reviews came out, I felt like, I just felt like I would get to it at some point. And it there was so much going on that year that I just didn't get around to it. But then eventually I did see it and thought it was fine.
Yeah.
But as the years have gone, I have more and more particular feelings about this movie,
right?
That I think overshadow the parts of this movie that do work.
Sure.
So I'm gonna try to be like diplomatic in this conversation,
for sure.
Just for the sake of having it like being actual conversation.
Sure. Instead of just
me being like
screaming into the void.
I get it. Which would be way too easy for me, because I'm fairly petty about this kind of stuff, I think. But I'm going to tend to restrain myself, compose myself.
I got you. And I will make a vow to try to make you not do that. No.
You're there with a stick just like poking.
Yeah, I'm really going to I'm going to be like, you know what? They should bring back the Snyderverse. Everything was correct.
You're just like that one guy in the Eric Bana Hulk movie when he's like tasing him. And he's like, come on, do it.
That's not Josh Lucas. Is that the character? That Josh Lucas one? Yeah, I'm into that.
The guy from Ford v Ferrari?
That's right. And Sweet Home Alabama.
I've never seen that. Is it fun?
I haven't seen it in a long time.
Okay. Because like a movie, if I had seen it when it came out, I feel like I'd have like a lot of nostalgia for.
My mom watched it a lot because my mom was very like, she was like raised by like her kind of Southern grandparents, and so when a movie called Sweet Home Alabama, and a song came out, my mom was like, "Oh yay, let's go!" And she's a big Reese Witherspoon fan and stuff like that. But I don't remember that movie very well.
Is your sister named after Reese Witherspoon?
I actually think a little bit. I think kind of. One of my siblings' name is Reese, and yeah, I think it's not.
I was talking about Alex. No,
I'm like, yeah, oddly he was.
Because it's Reese Alex Witherspoon.
That's right.
It was a deep cut.
But no, but I honestly, fair. I mean, talking about kind of my experience with Man of Steel. So like I've said on the podcast, I think going back to our first episode, that Superman was a character that I was aware of and liked, but he wasn't like one of my guys. I didn't start reading comics until I was like later in my teens. I'd always wanted to read comics. My parents would just never buy them for me.
That's fair.
And I was like 8, and they were like, no, we're not doing that. And
that's so funny you say that, because I remember thinking like my dad was telling me about when he was buying comics and stuff, and they were like, yeah, we couldn't afford them anymore because they stopped being like a dime. They started being like you had to pay like a quarter, and we just couldn't do it anymore. And I was just like, oh, I want to get comics, and there was like $16, and I was like, 8 years old with no money, like
yeah. Well, I was
like, damn, there's inflation.
The one comic book my parents bought me when I was a kid, I was probably like 8 or something, was a Simpsons comic. It was like,
they're like Spider-Man, Batman, The Simpsons.
I had like the Marvel encyclopedia, which had like the book on all the characters. But I had that, and then I had this like one single issue of a Simpsons comic book.
That's hilarious.
And that was it. And then it wasn't until I was a teen, so I didn't really understand Superman very much as a character.
Yeah.
I was really just the animated series, which is a good representation of him. But
it's pretty good.
I was a Flash guy growing up, and I still love that the Flash is like my second favorite superhero.
Behind who?
Animal, mineral, vegetable man.
That's amazing.
No,
right behind Matter Eating Lad.
Yeah, exactly. Arm fall off boy. All those guys.
That's what Nathan Fillion is, right? I forgot if they actually call him that or not, but
he is and he isn't. He's that. They call him TDK, which stands for the detachable kid, and it's that he can do like all of his other body parts too.
So I can do that, but they talk about me when I'm just dissociating. It's not really about my limbs.
Me on an emotional level more than a physical.
Like he's detached.
But so Man of Steel was the first Superman movie that I saw in theaters. Gotcha. And I was not super well versed in Superman.
What was that crowd reaction like? Do you remember?
I don't remember the crowd reaction, but I do
like
remember
warm, cold.
I remember
neutral?
Walking out of the.
Was the sound too loud to hear?
Yeah, probably. I went to go see Thunderbolts again with my sister. You'll appreciate this or be frustrated by it. Speakers were totally blown out.
Oh.
And all I could think about was you, because you were the first guy to be like, really pay attention to speakers in movie theaters.
I did, especially doing like Marvel movies. The first time I really noticed it was Thor: The Dark World, and I just remember like steaming in my seat. Not because I thought the movie was bad, which I mean, it's definitely on the low end, but I don't think I hate that one as much as some people do. But I remember thinking my theater experience for it was like trash, because it just sounded like terrible. It just sounded like one track turned all the way down, and I was just like,
it was literally the first time
like, where's the nuance?
First time I saw Thunderbolts was in IMAX, which is obviously a very high quality experience.
It's a good way to see a movie.
And then I agree. And then I went to go see it at another theater, and literally Florence Pugh's like, like that. And I was like, oh, this sucks.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. But so Man of Steel, I remember walking out and turning to my brother and saying at whatever 14 that I was the prime age to see Man of Steel, because I walked out and I was like, Superman is fucking cool. Was like how I walked out.
Nice.
And I was like fully bought in. And then by the time BVS came out, I had like read some comics. I hadn't revisited Man of Steel. I just found myself diving farther down the rabbit hole of comics and everything. Mm-hmm. And I remember walking out of BVS and going, oh, why do I? And I remember literally I went to see that movie with my brother, and we walked out, and I turned to him and I was like, did we have the same experience of like kind of like mid in that movie? You know what I mean?
Yeah, we were just like, what did I see? Like, and I think what's the most
the confusion.
Yeah, and I guess I think the most frustrating thing about these movies is that, like, I don't think they're bad. No. Like, because there's good stuff in these movies.
I mean, we watched Superman 3 a couple weeks ago.
We did. No, so it's like, the bench.
I know what a bad Superman
we know
movie
like a truly abysmal Superman movie can be. Yeah. But like, I think what's so like annoying about this is that it's so thinks that it's elevated.
Yeah.
And it's like it's not as smart as it thinks it is.
Yeah.
Which I think is what makes it so frustrating for me.
And I think
personally.
I think in some aspects of it, the movie is so fucking close.
It really is. It's like that little like left turn at the end that they make.
Yeah.
That like just undercuts everything that was working about this movie. And I think this movie is very flawed, and I think it's not without its controversies, but I do also think there's very good stuff.
Yes.
Cavill as Superman,
I think
pretty great. Pretty amazing choice.
Let's just get I guess we already said his name, but Zack Snyder is a man of many. I have some issue, like some disagreements, I suppose, to put it like politically or democratically. Like, I have some disagreements with how he interprets these characters.
Yes.
I think some of his strengths, I think casting has pretty consistently, with a few exceptions, he is as good instincts on casting.
Yeah, he does. I would agree with that.
I think obviously visually, that's like his probably highlight as a filmmaker is his visual style. I remember seeing
pretty much up till Rebel Moon, I think.
Yeah, it almost seems.
But even then, there's some like cool shots in that movie, but mostly I feel like that one's really like not to sound what I'm used to.
Like wearing a beret and smoking a cigarette like about it, but like
I should have got those props. I have those somewhere.
It's okay. I'll get them for the next episode.
I'm like itching. I'm like, cigarette.
But Rebel Moon kind of feels like someone doing a Zack Snyder movie to me at times. Like, it feels like we're almost like too like there's a little like not self-aggrandizing, but it just feels a little in conversation with its own style. Which I think a lot of his other works aren't. And I ultimately, like, seems like a really nice guy. Like,
and he clearly loves movies.
He loves movies,
which I love. Hearing him talk about movies, like you could, his passion for cinema is undeniable.
Yes, and he's, as all accounts have said so far, wonderful to work with. Actors work with him on multiple occasions. I haven't heard really negative things about working on those sets. Overall, like, it's just one of those things where it's like, I don't necessarily click with all of his movies. Some of them I do like. I haven't seen a lot of them, but like, it's just some of his stuff is not for me. And I think primarily it's the DC stuff. I was not a huge fan of Rebel Moon.
I don't think we finished the second one.
No, we didn't. We watched it together.
We did. We were like, okay, we'll come back and finish this. Yeah,
I'm sorry, Zach.
It's been like a year. It's just
yeah. But it's mainly on his interpretation of these characters. There's some interview clip of him being like talking about Superman that like he's I'm not the guy to do Superman, all this other stuff. And I think I would agree with that statement.
I would also agree with that.
We were talking about this, a piece of trivia that I found out that apparently X-Men Origins Wolverine was almost directed by Zack Snyder.
See, that I would have really liked to have seen.
Snyder is the guy that I think would do a good Wolverine. There are comic books that he has done.
Yeah.
300 is a movie that I haven't seen, but that is one that people tend to really like.
Awesome.
And
that's like a good movie. I think the thing about his movies is he tends to get like thematically like confused, which sounds really pretentious, but like the way he describes the movie and then what actually happens in those movies are there's a little bit of a dissonance. Yeah, there's a dissonance. Like there's like up to a point it sounds like the movie he's describing, and then there's usually like 2 or 3 things that like completely do not jive with how he is describing his movies. Well, and it's like always really funny to me to see like the dissonance between those 2 things.
There is a clip of Zack Snyder, which I hate to drop this person's name, of a clip of Zack Snyder on Joe Rogan. And I'm just going to brush past that real quick. But
why?
We're brushing past it.
He's a coworker. No.
It's that he's sitting right there in the corner. No. But he was talking about he's just
in the corner doing like pull-ups or something. We're
like, he's sitting there in his like weird time capsule set that he had in Texas for 3 minutes. But
okay, think about a gorilla.
It was Zack Snyder talking about him doing these characters, and he talked about the Kobayashi Maru, which I believe is like a Star Trek thing.
It's a Star Trek thing. It's from Wrath of Khan,
and that it was about like the unbeatable question or whatever.
Yeah, it's an unbeatable test, and the point is to fail the test to like learn something from failure.
But he talked about people talking about Batman.
Yeah.
And how they were like, well, Batman doesn't kill. And he was like, great. First thing that when you say that makes me want to do is put him in a situation where he needs to kill. And I want to say, I don't hate that instinct of let's put the character in a situation where it seems like the only option is to do the thing that they have vowed to never do. Where I have a problem with Snyder is that his answer is that character then decides to break their rule and do that thing.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately superheroes, and this is where like Snyder's the guy that wants to like and whether or not he is successful in this, I will not comment on, but he wants to reinvent something. He wants to reinterpret something. He wants to dissect is like a word that he uses a lot.
Yeah, he uses a lot.
And I don't think we often do that in a way that I feel like is effective towards superheroes. Like I feel like like in terms of like looking at this movie, right? His whole thing was like, what if there is a Superman? That's kind of the question of the movie. What if there actually in our real world is a Superman? What would the repercussions be? How would the world react to that? How would Superman react to that? A question that I'm not against. A question that I think James Gunn's Superman is going to get into.
I suspect James Gunn's Superman's going to have kind of similar plot beats.
My biggest issue is that I feel like in this movie, we are constantly asking that question, but we are never answering it.
Basically. Well, it's like he's always setting up a question, and then the action that like follows really has nothing to do with that question. So it always feels like someone's skirting around a really interesting idea, but not actually like dealing with the interesting idea.
Yeah.
You know, and like I mean, we'll get into this movie, but it's like this, like one of the things that like drove like the Batman trilogy that Nolan did, right, was they sort of had like every movie had like a one word sort of like overarching theme, and you could sort of distill every decision as like a dissection of that word, right? And so like Batman Begins is supposed to be fear. Obviously he fights the Scarecrow, and there's like you facing your fears and all that kind of stuff, and then the Dark Knight is chaos, and Rises I think was about pain. Which I haven't seen that movie since it came out, so like I don't know how well that one. Yeah, which is funny. I've rewatched the other two like so many times. I watch them like twice a year, I think. I love those ones. Yeah, and I don't even. Yeah, same. There's like one thing in it. The Robin thing will always like irk me. At the very end, but it's like what I think is a pretty great watch. I think up to that point, but I haven't rewatched it. But right, so like obviously they're trying to like readapt Superman in that vein. And so context, with this one, obviously Superman stands for hope.
Yeah.
And that's like the goal for this one is to like redefine him by hope. But that's where I feel like the movie really doesn't do what it's supposed to.
No.
Especially by the end.
Because I think, Russell Crowe gets these very thematically, expansive monologues about, you will be an ideal for people to strive towards, they will stumble, they will fall, and you will have them.
Yeah, you will guide them to
all that stuff. But then it ends with Superman committing murder.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's like, if that is what Superman, if that's what the proposition you're putting towards, right, is we are putting Superman in a real world with all these complications and all this stuff, but ultimately Superman is Superman at the end of the day, like, to just have it be like, and we'll get into it as we continue to get into the plot. What my big problem is with the Zod death, is just that it feels like we don't, like, it almost feels like the aspiration of Superman almost feels like that's not what the movie wants you to leave with.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's like, it seems to want to set up this thing of like, because I think the idea that they're going for is an interesting thing to try to do, right?
Yeah.
Even though I don't necessarily agree with it, but like, let's just take it for like what it is. And like you said, the Kobayashi Maru of it all, this idea of like what if you can't win though? But like, that's not really Superman's the deal. Like, his thing is that because he is who he is, he prevails. Like, that's kind of
Superman
super integral to that, I think.
He's the superhero, right?
Yeah, he's the guy, and
hope and optimism, and you can challenge that, but ultimately,
what's interesting about the character, seeing how he deals with that, and then again, this movie, it really is like all the challenges. It's just like, how does he deal with it? And it's like, he doesn't really deal with any of the things that are being prompted. You know, like, I feel like there's sort of a question floating through this movie of like should I jump in and like do something? Should I help?
Yeah.
But then he just does it.
It's all about,
like, he'll just go do the thing. He'll be conflicted about it, and then without any sort of really like big realization or being prompted, he just goes and does it because he's Superman. So it's like I don't know. Like, it's like they're not really challenging the idea at all.
Yeah. Well, okay. Kind of like, I like bouncing off of that point, like, where I think part of this movie kind of falters for me is how I view Superman. And obviously this is very subjective, but how I view Superman, how I feel Superman is best portrayed, is it is important to establish that his power comes from Krypton, but his morals come from
Earth.
Kents.
Yeah, from the Kents. Yeah.
From that ultimately, that yes, he is an outsider, but he is and he isn't. You know what I mean? And that's the trouble, is the grappling between
the bridge between two worlds.
Yes. and I think Jonathan Kent and Martha Kent are the two people that are able to, like, Superman doesn't just do good because he's just like, Jesus Christ. Like, you know what I mean? Just because he's like,
he's not
naturally, he's just like, he is genetically immune to imperfection. Like, that is not, I think, where Superman's goodness comes from. It comes from John and Martha Kent.
Yeah, who like raised him and stuff.
And so when you put John, more specifically John, and then Martha kind of picks up the baton of this in BVS, of casting doubt on Superman, on casting doubt on whether or not he should do these acts.
Yeah.
Then, like you said, he just starts doing good because he's Superman.
Yeah.
And then when you have Jor-El to be the one to be like, you must bring good, to be the one, or at least to be the one exclusively who's like, you must bring good, it almost feels a little, not condescending, but a little like Superman is above the people.
A little bit,
as opposed to being with the people, which I think is where Superman lives, is with the people.
He's supposed to, because that's like his whole thing. And I feel like that's part of like the confusion of like, they want him to be relatable, but at all times he's treated like a mythic god figure.
Yeah.
And so it's like, there's that dissonance in the idea of like, it's like you want to be relatable, but at every turn are making him not relatable.
Which I think Snyder sees the god.
Yeah.
And that is evident in all of his other works as well. That, of course, that's the part that he would be attached to. And even and I think the score is remarkable. And we've talked
Hans
about this.
Zimmer shows up just banging them drums like,
100%.
Let's go.
And like, we've talked about this off air, that it's like the John Williams theme is about what it is like to see and be saved by Superman. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's about up in the sky, that where, like all that. It's the heroics of Superman.
Yeah.
Whereas the Zimmer theme, which I'm not talking down on it. It's just a perspective shift. It's about power.
It is.
It's about the power of Superman, and that's where that score is very effective in the first flight sequence. Is that it's all about the power of Superman and the strength of it, and what it must feel like to rocket yourself into the sky and hover above the people. And I think
when I ring that bell the next day.
Dude, so true. Me, when I open, I open those chicken nuggets and it goes, whoa.
You unwrapping that
we plug them too much.
We really do. We really should stop.
Too much. But yeah, like that's where I think the themes shift.
Big corporation, but we will ring the bell whenever we see them.
Dude, I ring the bell like that guy in Andor in the first 2 episodes. I'm going dong.
Dude, I'm like the Hunchback, just a little like ring the bells.
But no, but I think
who is the monster and who is a man?
That's the difference between the themes, and while I think they're both effective, I think it showcases where I have a problem with Snyder's interpretation.
Yeah,
is that you are taking a lot of it. You're exclusively making him an outsider, which I think you're cutting off half of the story.
Yeah, well, it's like he's human in like name only. Like there's nothing really about this particular interpretation, with the exception of like a handful of like things that just he doesn't really feel like a person in a lot of it.
No.
But I guess we should probably start jumping into plot, right?
So I guess we open with Krypton.
The birth of Superman.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you feel about this? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. I think we were about to ask the same question.
How do you feel about this version of Krypton?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I like aesthetics of it. I do not understand.
It's funny with like world building. It's just there's sort of benchmarks for like really good world building, and I feel like Lord of the Rings is like up there. I think Dune enters the pantheon of like really good world building.
Say Wakanda.
Wakanda's really good, and I think part of like the things that make those places like work really well is that you believe people live there.
Yeah.
And when I look at this version of Krypton, I see a lot of cool stuff, but I have no idea how you like exist day to day there.
Sure.
And granted, like they were entering this movie at a very stressful time for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So
and
so this might not be a particularly fair criticism.
Well, I see.
But I also like there's something about like even like where they're like he's being birthed. I'm like, why? Like, and I know like one of the ideas is that they like build themselves into the crystals in like the original movie was kind of the idea. And even that one is like really sterilized, but like they're like in caves.
Yeah.
In this one, which is like an interesting choice.
I also think it's like this. This is like a visual thing that I think changes it shows the difference for me between the Donner Krypton and the Snyder Krypton, because ultimately, like you said, Krypton is meant at this point in its history is inhospitable.
It's at the end, you know.
Yeah.
It's they're out of resources. They're trying to figure out what to do.
I think
they're denying climate change.
Like they really are. Well, he's like, you sucked up everything. Like we're dying, and they were like, but what if we aren't though?
Yeah. Like what if we aren't, and what if we also stopped traveling the stars and came back too?
Yes.
What if we made it worse? A decision that I'm like, I don't understand that, but also that sounds very bureaucratic and sounds like something that would happen. So
yeah. Well, so with the Donner Krypton, the fact that they are closed off by a dome, is I think the difference.
Yeah, like there seems to be like at least like
it feels like they are backed into a corner a little bit. That it's like our world now exists only within this small faction. Yeah. So like they are so limited by physical space alongside everything else.
How do you feel about the Avatar flying creatures?
I did make a note, and I said, well, I wonder if Avatar was an influence on this.
I know, because when did Avatar came out? 2009?
2008?
2008?
I think. Yeah, or no, I think it is 2009.
I think it was. Right? I'll look it up.
But yeah, I mean, Avatar is definitely an influence, which is fine. I get
Vamp.
You know, I like parts of it. I think all the costume design is really cool and interesting, and I love
2009
the intricacies of it, and the I think all that stuff is really good. Yeah, I just think there sometimes is like cool for coolness.
Okay, so actually that's what I was gonna say. We've talked about especially during Mission Impossible, we talked about the rule of cool.
Yeah.
I feel like this movie gets into trouble with that rule.
Sure.
I think it's a thing that they're fighting constantly. I think that's kind of where I think the problem started. Is some of it just feels like, would it be cool?
There's
insert whatever the thing is. Wouldn't it be cool instead of like how does
a lack
it
of
support the story kind of thing?
A logic, like
a little bit, yeah. It's just sort of that's like the movie is. It's like it feels like a collection of like cool things that someone wanted to see, as opposed to like an actual story.
Well, it's also like again, it's like, and this is very Snyder to be like, so what if Jor-El but a badass?
Which also feels like, because I don't think we really got too much into the other variations of Superman that they tried to do. Like we talked a little bit about the J.J. Abrams flyby, but like Kryptonian kung fu finally sees the light of day.
I exactly thought
a
about
thing
that.
they had been pushing since the mid 90s.
Yeah, and
but which honestly though, like pretty badass watching Russell Crowe just like
I
mop
think he's
the floor
great.
with some dudes.
I will also say,
but it's funny to be like, he's a scientist, and then he's like, bam, 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 bam.
I'm
gonna drag your face through like a cheese grater.
No, for real. My like thought behind it is like, my assumption is that Jor-El must have served also in the military, which is how he knows Zod.
Yeah, which is a choice that works.
But also, if they are, I guess maybe that you're getting pushed to other stuff. But like, if everyone on Krypton is born to be a specific thing, and if he was Jor-El, presumably was born to be a scientist.
You see, this is the exact like thing we're talking about.
Then why would he be brought in as a soldier? Like, why would he be?
Yeah, there's really no reason for him to know kung fu other than it's really cool to see Russell Crowe bust out these moves.
How do you feel about the codex as we talk about all of this?
This is a thing that just kind of it's like a thing that I go like, I guess while you're having this fantastic world, you basically can just say that it exists. But the idea of like, so I like the idea of being like, we have the DNA of everyone and we've been like essentially printing people the last couple thousand years. That sounds really cool. But then there's also the detail of like Kal-El, Superman, is the first natural birth.
Yeah.
A detail that doesn't really have any other significance other than it sounds really cool. Like, and I feel like this was something that they were setting up for in the sequels a little bit. So like, it's like, it's one of those things I want to complain about it more, but like, given that like, original Superman has like the whole Zod stuff, like, I don't know. It's like, it sounds like a cool thing, but it also like the idea of like, oh, like, I don't know what it really is supposed to mean. It's just, it's unnecessarily really complicated. I feel like
my feeling, I feel like it's like a MacGuffin. It's like such an obvious MacGuffin. But I also think where I have a problem with it is when it becomes infused with Cal, and again, him also being the natural birth.
He is the Codex, but he also it isn't like you need the key to unlock the Codex. So like why not just put it in the key?
What I was, my thing with it is it kind of makes him a chosen one, a little bit.
Yeah,
and not in like a Harry Potter sense, I suppose, but like the idea that now that he is also different from other Kryptonians.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, again, it's like Superman is powerful because he happens to exist under a yellow sun in a different atmosphere or whatever. And so I'm like, Superman should be, it's like the Peter Parker thing where it's like, well, he was destined to be Spider-Man, where it's like,
yeah, but it's like, but that kind of removes his agency from choosing to do this in the first place.
Like I'm like Superman, and I'm not saying that that the Codex destines him to become Superman, but it makes him, it stops him from just being like the sole survivor. It makes him like this like artifact in a weird way.
It also is like, that puts a lot of pressure on like bringing Krypton back and stuff, which is like, I feel like would be like a noble effort, but like, I don't know. It's just the way this is all handled is like really wonky, I guess.
So it's like we need to get Zod to Earth somehow.
It's like we needed to get to Earth, but it's like, it also like sets up this idea of like, they really wanted Zod to be like, do I need to keep Superman alive to bring back Krypton, or can I kill him while I do this?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh yeah, you can kill him and still get the Codex. Like, it feels like
it's overcomplicated.
It's insanely overcomplicated for no reason. Like, it would be cleaner to just put it in that like key thing that they're constantly doing close-ups of, because it already feels super important, like,
or no Codex, Zod's bad. Jor-El fucked up his shit.
Yeah.
He's now going to kill his son. Like, I honestly think that that is effective in and of itself.
And it's also this funny thing of like, if Superman has the Codex, and this is kind of jumping ahead a little bit, right? Actually, you know what? I'm going to save this. Let's get a little bit more into the plot, and I will drop this when we get to this particular moment, because I think that'll be probably a better spot. Because I don't want to spend too long talking about the meta-ness without actually talking about the story.
Well, so
we do Krypton.
Yes.
Jor-El's doing some kung fu.
Yep.
His son's born.
Yep.
He steals the Codex.
Yep. Zod kills Jor-El.
As they're sending his son with the Codex.
I appreciate the distance between the events, I suppose, that it's not like
his son's being born while
Krypton is. I don't think that's a flaw of the prior origin. I just think it's kind of. I don't hate the way that you're kind of recontextualizing this.
This is very J.J. Abrams Star Trek though too. Like this was straight up happening in 2000. Was it 2008 or 2009?
This one?
We're going back to Star Trek.
Yeah, that one's 2008.
Yeah, okay, yeah, because it's like that one also has like the destruction of Vulcan and all this stuff and people being born.
Also,
during a really climactic explosion kind of stuff.
Lara is Vanessa. I didn't realize that.
I was
like, oh shit,
Vanessa.
Yeah,
from Daredevil.
Yeah, way to go.
Which also the no kill rule, Daredevil season 3 peak.
Yep,
that's the rule done at its best. So, but anyway,
but I would even say Daredevil Born Again does a pretty good job.
It does. It is basically a set of a sort of retread of season 3.
Well, it's tough because season 3 is also the Born Again story.
Yeah, basically.
So it's like they're like not doing it again, but they're kind of doing it again.
Like, we're gonna reboot with this title, but we're not gonna do it. But we're gonna.
It's a meta title and all that.
We want our cake, and we sure as hell are gonna eat it too.
Oh, they're in the midst. They
got that cake. They're like,
but yeah. Obviously, Michael Shannon plays Zod. For me, the highlight of the movie.
He's pretty great.
Fucking phenomenal.
I think there are moments in this movie where he is walking through it, and then there are other movies where he is so goddamn committed, and it is amazing.
We've talked about it
having
before.
both those in a performance.
At the end of the movie, when he's doing that, I have no people, all that stuff. I'm like, God, I love you, Michael Shannon.
I think my favorite story from behind the scenes of this was when he signed on. He was like, Zach, whatever you do, I just don't want to be in those like motion capture pajamas. Whatever you do, I want like a real suit to wear.
Yeah.
That's like my only request if I say yes to this. And Zach was like, okay, yeah, easy. And then on the day they showed up and handed in the pajamas and said, sorry, we lied.
That's funny.
And then they proceeded to CGI his armor, which I like the armor. I think the armor is a really cool thing. It does feel a little bit like we want to sell toys, which I get. But like Jor-El's armor in that first scene when he dons it, like for like that final like confrontation. Yeah, he's like, fax machine noises are happening while he's doing it.
Like even like I mean Shannon doing the heresy, like all that stuff. I'm like, yeah, man, you're eating this.
Yeah.
I
do you like all the Kryptonian elders and their like jewelry and stuff?
I do.
It's very Dune coded.
I just love to see like powerful rich people get fucked up. You know what I mean?
Like the wizard drip. Like
I'm all for like just like ignorant like powerful people being like everything's fine.
We will do what is right for the people and their interests, but also we have hoarded the money,
smacked around and everything. Like
I have lots of jewelry
being proven wrong. It's good to watch, man. It's fun to watch that. As I very revolutionary. I apologize. Actually, I don't. But yeah, I think all the Krypton stuff is pretty good.
I think it's pretty solid
for the most part.
Yeah, for the most part, I think it's pretty good. It doesn't like that. There's nothing like super glaring. I feel like the editing of it all, like the pacing, is a little funky because it's like the first 20 minutes of the movie, and there's like just a lot going on. Like it's like we got to birth Superman. We've got to steal the Codex. First, we have to break in to steal the Codex. Then we have to steal it and escape. Then we have to get ready to confront Zod while also sending Superman off to Earth.
Yeah.
And then we have to confront Zod, and then we watch his
it feels
trial.
It
there's already like 6 plot points in the first 20 minutes that aren't really for the main movie.
Yeah, it feels a little more. It feels more interested in Zod's setup than Clark's, which I'm open to.
Yeah.
But because I feel like we miss a lot of the markers sometimes with Superman and his story, that I'm like, well, okay, well now we're spending time where we should be really, if we had more of a cohesive thing with Superman going on, I wouldn't be as bugged about it.
Yeah, see, my thing is like I just kind of wish that for the sake of the movie that when they had done this stuff, like it should have been more focused on just the like sending Superman away part in the beginning.
Kind of just like,
and then
and
just
he's
moving
gone.
all the Zod stuff to the middle when he like gets to like his like spaceship Fortress of Solitude proxy. And then they just do it there. Like just do the flashbacks there as he like learns about his heritage. I feel like that's a stronger place to do it.
Yeah,
but
well, also
you know,
because the movie does dabble in being non-linear and having some flashbacks.
It does,
but
so
it
it's
is
like-
also kind of half in, half out with that.
It really is.
It is.
I
And
will
it
also say
isn't.
another like issue I have with this movie is all the flashbacks are really, with the exception of like I think 2 flashbacks, most of them are really unprompted.
Yeah.
Which like if you go watch Batman Begins, there's a lot of flashbacks that basically every time it happens, it is basically whenever they cut back from the flashback, it is essentially he has been telling someone that story of what has happened, and that's why we're jumping back, is because he's essentially telling someone in the narrative that that's what happened, and we're just getting it through the narrative of a movie and stuff like that. But this movie is essentially borrowing that plot structure without the same support.
It's one of those things. It's like later in the movie. It's when Clark, I think, is getting picked on by the bullies. He like bends the fence and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And Clark's like, oh, I wanted to hit him so bad. And he's like, one day you're gonna have to figure out the boy that you're gonna, or the man you're gonna be. And I was
Guy
like,
who breaks necks.
yeah, I was like, this is at the wrong place in the movie, because I have known that he will save people, because not just because he's Superman, but because he's been actively saving people.
He's been actively saving people the whole time.
And he also did it when he was younger, presumably. And then, all the moments
He's
post
already conceivably,
this,
he's already, especially when he's banging the gate, he's already saved the bus.
yes. And in terms of the chronology of the film,
It's like the second or third flashback.
after he says you're gonna have to be the person that you want to be, it then leads into him, jumping over oil tankers that explode and snapping Zod's neck. That I'm like, well, okay, are you trying to, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, well, this is not. That feels almost in conversation with what's coming in the future.
Yeah, it's just like, this movie's edited really wonky, I think. It's my issue more is really just the pacing and the arrangement of all of these scenes. It's just really random the way it's like laid out, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess we should probably go into more of the like actual like plot.
Well,
So
we're working our way.
we gotta
through
work
it
our
as
way.
we
But
go
yeah, so
through.
like Krypton happens, he's sent, Jor-El dies.
Yeah, and then we do all the stuff with Krypton explodes, blah blah
Krypton
blah.
explodes.
Zod is sent off in a ship that doesn't
Looks
look like nothing.
something you'd get at Spencer's gift shop.
Yeah, it's we get through all that stuff. We land on Earth. Clark is a nomad, and he's moving
jump
from
right
job
into
to
the-
job. The oil tanker.
He's a crab. He's a crab.
Yeah, he's
lobster
deadliest
man.
catch.
Deadliest catch.
Yeah.
Deadliest catch. Really big at the time, I think.
Yeah,
His next stop, Ice Road Trucker.
and there's that whole hey.
I feel like Zack Snyder was like, they were watching the History Channel a lot, and like the ads would come and be like, he should work there, and then he should do this, and then maybe he should clean out sewers too. No. Like they're watching like Dirty Jobs with Mike Rowe. Like
that's
he gets a
all
job in a
very
pawn shop.
Snyder, that would be actually. I would love that if it was like, what's Clark been up to, and it's like, I'll give you a 75 for that. And they're like, that's just not going to be enough. Sorry,
Like, Clark, you don't really know anything about that, do you? He's like, not at all. And then they're like, we have to let you go.
Running through this, no. So the oil tanker save is, again, I think it's cool. Again,
It's
Snyder,
a cool idea, but it's not a very good sequence in my opinion.
Yeah,
It doesn't really build. It's just like,
there's not
those
a lot
people
of
are in danger,
tension.
and then he saves them. That's it.
Yeah.
Like it's like boom, bam. It's a 2-minute sequence.
Yeah.
And I'm
I
just
think-
saying it should be like at least like a 7-minute save, and there should be like a moment of him being conflicted about whether he should jump in or not.
Yeah, because
Because that's the thing. Like, there's so many moments in this movie that you would have you believe that he's conflicted about when and where to jump in and use his powers, but like every time he just does it.
Yeah, he seems pretty on board for
Pretty
being
on board for
Superman.
saving people, but he seems sad about it. Like, which is like, that's not really. Like it's just like that's not really what Superman's conflicted about. I think about like his choice to save people. It's more about, I guess, the how of it all and I don't know. Like it's such a weird.
I mean, it's a lot of stuff. I mean,
thing.
it's like the reaction to stuff. We never get the reaction really to any of his
No,
saves.
we don't.
Which is what also makes the problem of the like, what would a world be like with the Superman be a problem, because we don't start to ask those questions really like the
So,
world
like, the
doesn't start to
2-hour
ask those
mark?
questions until we're like halfway through the movie.
Yeah.
And that's all really in conversation with the fact that Zod gets to be the person to be like, hey, aliens are real.
Yeah, which
So
I
it's
think,
like, well, now we're asking about Zod, and then people keep being like, oh, and then also, yeah, what about this Kal-El guy?
yeah,
And it's
he's
like, well,
been
now
hiding here
it's
for 30
just
years.
off him. Like,
Yeah, it's
Superman, it should be him as Superman saving people,
Yeah.
and then the world being like, honest, and I hate to like sound, I know people are gonna yell at me, I don't give a fuck. Like, it's that interview in the James Gunn trailer already. We haven't seen the movie yet, where she's like, "Did you consult the president?" And he's like, "No." And she's like, "Well, you like maybe stop the war." And he's like, "No, I did." And she's like, "Well, you were representing the United States and all." Like, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, let's actually like push up against
really like asking some interesting.
It's
questions.
We're too like abstract, I think, with the questions, and we're not answering it. We're just too.
No, the support for what they think the themes are is really not. It's not. It's a really bad foundation.
To me, it feels like
speaking.
We like the idea of asking questions, but we're never really grappling with.
No,
the
none of the actions, none of the way the set pieces are set up. Like the oil tanker, it's like it really annoys me that like. It's just like, oh, how are those people going to get off the oil rigger? And then it's like you don't even see him like think about how he's going to use his powers.
He just does it.
It just cuts to him ripping a door off and being like, "Let's go."
Which it's like,
it's like we're skipping over the save. Even.
Yeah,
like we're not even seeing how like crazy it would take like a regular man to get through that. It just cuts to him shirtless, which I'm not opposed to.
No,
it's a great physique.
Listen,
10 out of 10.
He's unbelievably good looking.
It is
fucking unreal.
I literally had to stop the movie and go, I can't continue unless I go to the gym. I feel like today I'm starting back up, and then I went. Haven't been back since.
It is like,
so the movie's doing other things right. It's motivating me to get myself back together.
I've got some thoughts. Things are going on in my noggin. You know what I mean?
None of them are G-rated.
Yeah, it's all pretty like, whoa. It's all very Jim Carrey in The Mask, like jaw hitting,
tongue rolling out.
Yeah, he's gorgeous.
He's a handsome ass dude in this movie, man.
But like, speaking of the oil rig thing, it's something I didn't notice until this watch, that it's like when he's holding up the side of the rest of the rig or whatever, that you watch the steel beam that he's standing on, that you watch it start to bend because of the weight, but Clark can hold it up. Like, that's a fun visual like flourish, I suppose. But
it's like he's not failing, the rest of it's
the
failing,
building itself is. I was like, okay, that's cool, but also it's like that is something that's like a fun bit of frosting. Yeah. But it doesn't save the whole thing. No, it's, you know what I mean?
It's like, lack of a better thematically, word. This is like a scene that should be like a little bit towards the 40-minute mark of the movie. Of like, okay, now I have to jump in.
He spent his whole life as an outsider now.
Yeah, and like even if there was like a, we'll talk about it. Like,
well, even like the stuff in the bar where he's like he does the logs through the truck or whatever. Yes. Like, that almost feels like that should come before the oil rig.
Yeah, we should see him being a little
because it's
petty
him
and selfish,
half in, half out.
It's the Spider-Man of it all, right? He chose to do something selfish, and the repercussions for it were dire.
Well, it's also
and then that has prompted this sort of like, I have the power, I have to do something kind of atonement for it all, and it's not that you necessarily have to have like a mistake, but like there is no real decision made for him to save people. He's just doing it.
So then when we go back to like, well, what are you going to do? It's like, well, I already know he's doing it. You're not adding enough tension. You're not making this interesting enough for me to wonder if Superman will end up saving people.
Yeah.
Like, because I know that he saves people. We've all like, on a meta level, he's already been saving people on a textual, like in the movie.
Yeah, he's already like, he out of the gate, he saves people, and then like 30 minutes later, he's like, should I save people? I mean, you've already been doing that for like 30 years. Like,
it seems like the movie is, again, like I was saying, is more interested in the idea of, well, what happens when you introduce yourself as Superman, when the world knows that there's an alien, when the world knows that there's a person with these powers. But the movie, again, it
kind of confused about that.
It gives that moment to Zod, because Zod is the one that makes everybody freak out.
Yeah,
and then
it was like, oh no, I wasn't ready.
Like, when I'm kind of jumping ahead, we we may end up going non-linear, much like this movie is in terms of our conversation.
We should have planned this to do it like Memento for no other reason than we could.
That's pretty smart. But I
will edit it out of sequence.
When I think it's Chris Maloney, who's great in this movie.
Love Chris Maloney, dude. They came together.
Oh yeah, he's so good in that. We were just talking off air about.
I don't know if we could quote like his scenes in it, but they're hilarious.
He's wild.
Go watch him. Should do more comedy.
But yeah, there's that moment where he comes up to, there's all the soldiers and Superman standing there, and Maloney goes, "This man is not our enemy," and I was like, this feels deeply unearned.
It really is. It's not really. That's like a thing that's not set up.
I do not believe at one point, because it's like Zod is already like, if they do a better-ish job with Batman in the sequel for him to be like everybody's telling me this guy is good. It doesn't matter. He destroyed a fucking city.
Yeah.
And
we should put him on trial. And then they're like, we're not going to put him on trial for that. We're going to fabricate a whole
make
other
up something
thing
else.
And frame him for it.
But it's in reaction to Superman as an entity, which is what this movie wants to question. But nobody knows about Superman. Nobody knows that there's this guy or all this other stuff. There's like a mystery behind it. So the world can't grapple with the existence of Superman because nobody knows about Superman.
Nobody knows he's there until they're just like, he's there. And they're like, what? And then within 10 minutes, he's like on Zod's ship.
Yeah.
But yeah, all this I'm from. Like another thing that's that feels like unearned, right? The first flashback where he's in the closet and he's like all his senses are heightened and he's freaking out. I actually like the way this particular scene is constructed.
Yeah. The visualization of
the effect
is
so cool. The way Martha has to come in and guide him and help him is awesome.
Sure.
I don't like. This is just fuck that teacher for letting all those people crowd the door.
Yeah, it's
so inappropriate.
Child's having a panic attack.
Yeah, he's having a meltdown. You're just bro, homie's overstimulated and needs space, and everyone's like, freak's being weird.
I guess as we
poke him,
as you bring her up, how do we feel about? And we've touched on this lightly, but how do we feel about Kevin Costner and Diane Lane as Pon Ma?
The casting is really good. I think they're not utilized very well.
Yeah.
I think there are moments it's that thing of the details to really utilize them super well is there, but they never quite take advantage of everything that they have going for them.
Get a lot to do.
No, she doesn't. I like all the stuff she gets to do, but it kind of comes up in random ways, and it doesn't really help with what the movie does end up doing, I guess.
Yeah.
Is the thing. And again, this just kind of plays back to the whole thing of it being kind of in conflict with itself. But I feel like when she's in it, she's doing good stuff, and I like her as Ma
She's
Ken.
great. Yeah.
How do you feel about them? What's your thoughts?
I like her a lot. I like Costner a lot. I think there are moments where he's hitting. I mean, we've talked about this off air.
I think Costner's written really poorly in this, but I love him as a choice for Pa Kent.
The "You Are My Son" scene, I think, is wonderful.
Pitch perfect.
I love that scene.
Pitch perfect.
The idea of he's listen, you were sent here. You were sent here for a reason. All this other stuff. The fact that the scene
you are not alone
before it is Costner being maybe you should have let those kids die.
I know.
I was
stupid.
No, those are two different guys.
Yeah, and you know how you save that scene, right? Not to rewrite it, because I shouldn't do that. But it's all you have to do is have him be you shouldn't be doing this, and then he'd be like, what should I do? Let them die? And he goes, you got me, kid. No, you shouldn't have. You did the right thing.
Maybe is a pivotal.
Yeah, and it's maybe
conclusion.
It's what? No, objectively, he should save people. He has the power to do it. But yeah, if you just have him I'm trying to protect you. There's other things going on. I'm just a little freaked out about this. But maybe is the wrong response, and I think it kind of ruins the Pa Kent character.
Yes.
But jumping back to the. Him being in the closet, being overstimulated. That seems really good. And then it cuts back to, because he lands in the water, right? And then he's floating there all majestically.
Sure.
The human form has never looked better than it does floating in that water.
Very, very true. Very true.
But his eyes open, he cuts to the flashback. They do the flashback. When it ends, he's looking at a whale and a baby whale, right?
Yeah.
We should see the whale and the baby whale before to prompt the memory of the mother. Right?
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
You know, like it's just that thing of like we want to justify all these things, but like we're gonna throw in all the details of the questions way too late in the game.
Yeah.
So it's like we don't see like for us to be able to like watch this movie effectively or like as an audience member, we're not really getting the information we need when we need it.
Yeah.
We're getting like what should be a really cool scene very quickly, but it just seems really random every time. And that's like kind of the problem I think with this movie is that it's like the questions and things that it wants you to think about come like way too late in the game.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like that's just like I think like a microcosm is like that like
kind of an Exhibit A kind
Exhibit
of
A, and it's like you could argue that it's like that should be part of it, but it's like that's a long flashback for me to be like in my head I'm just when you come back to the whales, it's like whales. Question mark?
Oh, that's right. He's underwater.
Oh yeah, that's cool. Like it's just like to me, I'm like I don't get the symbolic choice with the whales, even though like you're like, oh, that should be like, oh, he sees the whales, he's thinking about his mother, and like that sounds really cool, but that's not what happens, right?
Yeah.
You know? But like what happens right after that?
He does that. He goes and he like becomes a
steals some
nomadic.
clothes.
He steals some clothes. And he gets to the Arctic, and we're introduced to Lois Lane, played by Amy Adams. We've discussed her a little bit before. In rewatching this, I think Amy Adams is a phenomenal actress. I love her. I think she's incredible. Been very underserved. I wish that she could be in bigger stuff. I feel like she hasn't really gotten the opportunity to do a lot of stuff. Maybe she doesn't want to. I don't know. But I think she's unbelievably talented. I think she has a Lois Lane in her, but I feel like they're not letting her be Lois Lane.
No, I find her not scrappy enough.
Yeah.
I feel like she ends up kind of being just like
she's pretty quiet.
She's
pretty subdued.
She's got a very calm energy, and I feel like one of the things that makes like Margot Kidder work so well is that she's like a bullet with everything she does. Like she's just very direct, very like, hey, put that down. Like and you're just like, oh, sorry, you know,
smartest person in the room a little bit.
Yeah, and whereas like Amy Adams is very like, I know something you don't kind of energy, which is like kind of works for it, but I feel like she's just too nice. I feel like for Lois Lane.
I get that. Which again, it's like I can see her totally working as Lois.
Yeah, which I feel like I've seen her do movies where she is that level of direct. I think it is the writing that kind of blows it, I guess.
I also think the any form of romantic tension between her and Clark is frankly non-existent. I do not buy them as a couple.
If that guy soared out of the sky and swooped and caught me, I would definitely be like ready. But like also,
I feel like we're always
they collectively have like I think like 20 minutes of interactions before they're like, we're gonna mac it now. Like,
well, I feel like a lot of in their conversations, I almost feel like they're structured as Lois looking at like a thing. For lack of a better word, like like again,
like, what are you? What's going on?
The outsider thing, like it's all about like what's the angle here? What's the story with you? Which I don't not understand that instinct because I understand that's a part of Lois's character. Of course, she's going to be obsessed with the story and who is this. Mm-hmm. But in terms of a romantic level, I never feel like the conversations are romantic in any way.
No,
I never feel like they
don't really flirt with each other. Nothing like
when they kiss, it feels like they're kissing because
the script said so.
It's Clark and Lois. Of course, they have to kiss. And I was like, at that point, don't have them kiss.
No, they should, or maybe they should like look at each other like. Like when like, I don't know, they like I don't know. I think there could be some fun to be had with that, but because the movie wants to be like serious and brooding, they don't.
If anything,
take advantage of those moments.
Yeah, it's a relatively humorless movie.
Which it makes for this movie's a bit of a drag to watch. Like, I don't think I've rewatched it in full since it came out originally. I think I've watched a lot of clips since. And it's a fairly fatiguing movie, in my opinion.
There was a little bit of me that because obviously, we've watched all the Superman movies. We take a little bit of break in between, recording one of these episodes and then recording the next one. And we had a break between Returns and Man of Steel. And it did take me a while to watch this one. I was like, I don't know if I can do this.
I know.
Partially because obviously we did Superman 3, Superman 4, and Returns, which I don't hate, but has its problems.
It has its problems. That one also has like a runtime problem, but like it's like different. Like whereas like instead of feeling like fatigued, you're just sort of like disinterested.
Yeah, you kind of start to disassociate a little bit.
Whereas with this one, I'm just like, I'm sorry, what is what is happening? Like it's like is what's happening just am I just not it's like it's like I feel like the impression is that like this movie is too smart for me to watch, but the reality is that the mechanics of it just don't actually work. And so it's actually just convoluted in a lot of points. And that's what makes it so like fatiguing is you think there are details you're missing, but that's not what's happening. They don't exist.
They're just not there. How do you feel about in terms of we've talked about this character being reinvented, that this is it, and I don't know if we said this, but this feels very much as it's staring in the eyes of Returns a little bit.
Yeah.
Of like, oh, well, that one didn't have a lot of action. This one's going to be like almost all action.
Well, but only in the last hour.
True. Which, oh boy.
Which I think gives it a Mission Impossible 2 problem of like, it's like a lot of nothing. And then it is just like an hour of like explosions, which is also fatiguing for different reasons.
But how do you feel about it? We get to the Arctic. We are introduced to this movie's version of the Fortress of Solitude. How do you feel about it?
I don't hate the idea of them swapping it out for like just a spaceship, essentially.
Sure.
Because I'm like, okay, cool. We're doing the grounded, gritty version. Doing like a Star of Bethlehem take is a bit,
sure.
It's a bit big for the tone.
Sure.
So I'm down for the idea of like just a spaceship. Now, personally, I prefer a big Fortress of Solitude. I think Superman should be like walking
in a
around.
Coat.
Hey.
Question mark?
Hey.
In a coat?
He needs
a big ice fortress and a duster.
Just like Smallville at the end.
Holy shit! Yeah, you're right.
That actually, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. Say what you're gonna say.
No, these are good questions. I meant to ask you earlier, but then we kind of like.
We're here to ask the real questions. Like, what if the Fortress of Solitude had a coat?
There wasn't a big man in a coat, so this movie's got a 0
There's
out
a
of
big
10.
guy in a suit.
Big guy in a suit.
Whatever the Kryptonian
I'm assuming
henchman
he's
is.
like non, right?
Yeah, it's their version. Yeah.
Because they swapped the names. I think we kind of talked in Superman 2. And that one it's
Ursa and Non.
Ursa and Non, and then in this one we basically she's Feora in this, but it's essentially the same character.
It's same.
I think we literally had this exact conversation in 2.
But you were saying about the fortress.
Okay, so I don't really have an objective aversion to it being a spaceship. I prefer big crystals because I think big crystals is just fucking cool.
Agreed.
But this version makes no sense.
Yeah.
Because, right, the idea is that it's a space shuttle that has been buried into the ice. It's from an abandoned Kryptonian mission.
20,000 years old.
It's 20,000 years old. Humanity doesn't know where it came from. It's like freaking them out. It's like, which is very Michael Crichton. If you've ever read like Sphere or anything like that, like that's like the setup is like there's an object, and based on like the coral around it, we know it's like a 1,000-year-old, millennial age old thing. And then when they get to it, there's like the American flag on it, and they're like, oh, what is this?
What is it?
Yeah. And so they're trying to do a similar thing, right? But if that's what this is, it's an abandoned space shuttle from that mission. Why does it have his like house crest and a suit for him on it?
I do not know.
Like it's basically purely coincidence that the one that went to Earth is the one that was like gonna be the only access he has to Krypton. Ultimately,
and this is not me.
Like, and I just don't know if it's like. If it's just, there's like, basically the idea is like, well, that's why Jor-El has sent it is because like his family was originally supposed to colonize it or something. And so like the groundwork's already there. But it just, to me, it's like, it's another like unnecessarily complicated idea.
Well, there's obviously there's all those pods. They show like a dead Kryptonian, one of them.
Yeah.
One of them
is maybe Supergirl. I don't know.
So one of them
or
is
maybe she's
open.
on board.
And that's what Snyder said. Oh, we were saying that may or may not be Supergirl or someone related. So maybe you could say that there's a suit there because Kara is she's Kara Zor-El.
Yeah.
So it's like there were some members of the House of El on there. So that suit is there because, but also now we're also changing that Kara is like an ancient ancestor of Clark? Question mark.
Which it's just that thing of like the timeline. Like which
I'm not against.
It's again, I'm not against, but it's so unnecessarily complicated. Like, but not in a fun Mission Impossible way. It's just it just makes me so distracted while the rest of the movie's happening.
Also, it's like, why?
Yeah, and it's just, but like, it's like, if it is just the space shuttle that he was sent in, then him having the suit on board, it's just like, no, you were destined to wear this thing. You know, like where they where they choose to like place this like destiny stuff is just really like wonky, you know?
Yeah.
And so this version for me is just kind of dumb ultimately, because it's just like, it's from the abandoned mission, but it has like a ship or it has a suit and his like crest. And it's just like,
I also
think still works after all this time. Like, no, which I guess isn't, it's super advanced. So you know, whatever, you know, you can kind of make that up as you go, as you go along, but it's just like, it's like, it just feels like what it was it was going to be different in the prior draft and they forgot to update it when they changed it.
I also think one of my things too,
so
is
it just feels a little sloppy, I guess.
We decide to, blow it up. Basically, we like throw it out of the Arctic, and then so I'm like, okay, so
we turn into a bomb.
We just won't do the Fortress of Solitude ever again.
Yeah, basically.
You know what I mean? Or how it is in BVS, where it's like we can go to it, but it's like in the middle of Metropolis. It's like there. The Chicago Bean. It's just like
a double
in
park
place for people.
The double park by the Staples Center there.
Yeah, like I'm like, okay, well, like. Now we're
some other. I don't really know what stadium would be in Chicago. Did they have a Staples Center, or did they making stuff up
in Chicago?
Yeah, is it? Where's
I mean,
the Staples
they
Center?
have like Staples Center is in.
Is that New York?
I think that's in L.A. Right? Staples Center because it got
renamed,
it is LA,
right? Yeah.
Isn't it like the Bitcoin Center or something?
The Doge,
Crypto Arena?
Doge, Crypto Doge.
What a cool name.
Bahama Mama Stadium.
Yeah. But I don't know what it is, But yeah, it's like one of those like, okay, so now, you know, this place for Superman to go back to and reflect and be kind of the one space where he can be connected to his Kryptonian heritage, we're just doing away with.
Yeah.
Which is kind of frustrating.
It's super frustrating.
My
review of this movie.
Super frustrating.
Super frustrating.
Fair. But yeah, so
little letters.
We make our way. I guess we're kind of getting to
we have like the Arctic thing. He saves
the
Lois
first
Lane. Then we get, you know, he takes the spatial away. He does the first flight. Well, actually, I guess we learn about Krypton first, and then he does the first flight. But it's just essentially a rehash of everything we saw in the first scene.
Yep.
But we're being reiterated it again.
Yep.
Like I said, I think it would have been better if these flashbacks happened here, because it would have just, I think, gotten to who, like, we need to get to the Superman's, like, who Superman is as a man. I think a little earlier in this movie.
Yeah. Well, also the movie feels completely disinterested with talking about him as a man.
It is. It's so. It's more like fear him.
It's literally him like as a god and like a like figure as opposed to a person.
Yeah.
And I'm not as interested. I think to me, I find that deeply much less compelling.
It's not super compelling at all.
But the first flight sequence
is amazing. It's kind of one of the only real scenes in the movie, in my opinion. Like everything else is really disjointed and happens so fast that it doesn't really feel like scenes. It feels like a highlight reel for like an hour. And then this feels like the first real like scene with like a beginning, middle, and end.
I think it's a fun reference to do the like leap tall buildings in a single bound for a sec before he starts to fly. I think Cavill does a good job kind of like in the beginning showing like the force, like exerting the force of trying to fly. I'm not a huge fan of the like snap zoom stylized thing. I understand.
It kind of takes me out because I know that like even as a snap zoom that it feels impossible. So the fact that they're trying to make it feel possible, something about it draws more attention to it than I think it should.
My thing is like
maybe I'm being too technical. I don't know.
I understand why we used it as a technique to like showcase to make it feel more tangible. Like I understand that you want to like show off the speed of Superman, so you want to kind of like just barely catch up with him. It's just it's nothing even in particular with like this movie. I'm not like taking umbrage with Snyder or anything. It's just a general style choice that's been in a bunch of movies that I just don't really click with. I just think it's a little messy.
It is.
It just and I know it's intentionally messy. It's not one of my things.
Yeah, I know.
But the flight sequence I think is really good. Again, I do have a bit of a problem with it being like Jor-El being like, you know, I'm the guy that's making you Superman. That, like these are the morals, because I think it's soon after that or around this time that we get to the tornado sequence, which we should discuss because
do we have to?
Unfortunately, we think we've put ourselves by creating this podcast.
I know. At the minute we said we were doing Superman, I was like, oh, we're gonna have to talk about the tornado.
So
what? Okay, hear me out. What if Pa Kent shows up in Wicked Part 2?
We're getting.
How do you feel
somewhere.
about that? How do you feel about that?
As
interconnected DCE Frank L. Baum.
I'm into
connected
this.
universe.
I'm into what you're doing. But
Just
I
bopped the mic. Sorry about that, guys.
Hey, that's okay.
I was just giving you guys a little kiss.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Sometimes, sometimes I appreciate that.
This conversation get a little heavy. I just got to remind you guys we love you.
But so the tornado thing. So the idea is John Kent doesn't want Clark to show people his powers. He does not want to
reveal himself yet.
Because he doesn't think the world is ready.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that's not your choice.
I would agree with you.
I recognize that you're his dad.
Yeah, it's just I think
but that's
weirdly,
not up to you.
What would make this scene work better in the context of what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
Frankly, I think the whole idea should be completely retooled. But like, let's just say we're going with this idea of him being swallowed. I think it would work better if after that argument, like, there's an opportunity for like Clark to like basically run away. And then find out that his father was swallowed by a tornado, and then you do like the sort of Uncle Ben thing, of like, I wasn't there, I chose my ego over the thing, and now even though I know he wasn't ready for me, I feel like I do have a responsibility to do things. Like I feel like that is like kind of what the scene should be if you're gonna do this.
Yeah.
But having Pa Kent be like, no,
it's also
not yet. Like it's just like I feel like it feels like the kind of scene that should either end one or two ways. Either Clark shouldn't be there at all, or he should save him and be so fast no one catches him, and then be like, oh my God, like he is the Superman.
Yeah.
When the world will be ready, it's going to be incredible. Like it should, like that could be like a really powerful moment, but instead it's like the most like convoluted thing ever.
It also feels a little bit, and this is maybe me being a little bit forgive me. But it feels a little bit like the movie being like, this is an important, it's a little too almost patting itself on the back a little bit. It really is.
The movie's really proud of this moment.
Sacrifice. And it is,
which I think is supposed to like juxtapose with Jor-El also basically dying while trying to save Kal-El, but it's like Clark's just over there under an underpass. Like it's not quite the same.
What I think makes the Jor-El death in this and the Jonathan death in the Donner one work for me is that it's it happens before you know that it's happened, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The idea of it's like it is already here. And like it, like you said, the tornado thing, it's like and this has been said countless times too, that it's like, yeah, he could have saved him. And I guess that's the point, is that it's like, yes, I know you can save me, but I don't want you to. But it just feels like I don't see the purpose of it.
It's also the thing, based on the way he's saving people, I just don't buy him not saving him. It kind of does. He's just like, I don't like your mother's cooking. Sorry.
Like it just feels like he's just like, I'm gonna die now because I want to die.
Yeah. He's like, honestly, I think he's being petty. He's like, you were mean to me in the car.
We had a little bit of a tiff.
I'm gonna haunt you now. Like,
yeah.
But it's just that thing of like, I don't buy that this, based on everything else the Superman has been, this like version of Clark Kent has been doing for like his entire childhood. I don't buy that he would stand there and let his dad die.
Yeah.
I can get behind Pa Kent being like, no, like don't, like please don't. I like trying to protect him. I buy. Clark, I think, would just be like doom and go grab his ass. I don't buy it.
I think it's this thing of like, Clark references this. We've referenced this in this episode that he says like, oh, my dad didn't want me to save him because he didn't think the world was ready. And the idea of like, okay, if we were more clear about the idea of like, I am so struck by my dad's sacrifice because he doesn't believe the world was ready. I am saving people, but I am now living in fear of my dad's fear that the world is not ready for me.
Yeah.
And then when Zod shows up, and this has nothing really to do with the like, what if there was a Superman, but like the idea of like, when are you going to show yourself?
Mm-hmm.
That if Zod forces Clark's hand of like, show yourself, which you can make the argument, oh, the movie does it because he calls himself out on TV. I would have a disagreement with that because Clark has already put on the suit.
Yeah.
We've already done the first flight. So Clark is already
he
decided
should already
he's
have
going
shown
to
himself
become
when
Superman.
they show up.
Well, it's like, it's either he's already been Superman and the world doesn't know how to grapple with it until a threat like Zod shows up, right? And then Superman can prove that he is doing what he wants to be a part of the human race, that he stands against even his own people, right, from another world, that he says that you are my people, the Kryptonians are not my people. That's one thing. Another thing is, I am living in hiding. I do not want to have what my dad feared.
Yeah.
And then Zod says, tough fucking luck.
Yeah.
Becomes Superman. And then you have him put on, he maybe doesn't even wear a suit. Maybe it's like the Action Comics, the New 52 one, where it's the S t-shirt. You know what I mean? And it's not the full suit yet, but he's been forced into being Superman. But in doing that, he sees the benefit of being a symbol and giving people hope.
Yeah.
That's another thing. Both could be very effective. The movie does both of them at the same time and also neither of them. And that is my fucking problem
not doing
with
it, you know?
Is that it's like, you can't have Clark have his hand be forced because he's already put the suit on.
Yeah.
He's decided that he wants to be
already,
Superman.
Yeah.
And then he can't be in a world where the Superman already exists because Superman hasn't existed yet.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it just doesn't add up. And that's the problem.
Yeah, well, it's like you said, like, how can the world grapple with what if there's a Superman if they're learning about it because Zod is destroying everything? Like, at that point, they're probably less concerned with Superman than they are about the Zod character. Like, you know, the guy who's actually talking to them. Like,
and I will say, the video of Zod is pretty cool.
It is pretty cool.
It's pretty cool. I like it. I think it's eerie. I think the potential of that's pretty strong. But yeah, like all that. So then when we get in this whole thing of Zod and all this other stuff, this grappling with he's attacking, like Zod and his army is attacking people on Earth, that it's like, well, yeah, obviously now you'd be in a position where you'd be like, thank God for a Superman.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And almost like
I really needed one of those right about now.
Yeah. And it's like, there's also this whole moment where Feora, right? We said her name was?
Feora.
That she talks to Superman. It's like, oh, your morality and all this other stuff, that is your weakness. I'm evolutionary above you because I've evolved past morality or whatever.
Because I have no social skills.
But I'm like, the movie doesn't even really acknowledge that. Superman saves a guy in a helicopter.
He saves a couple of people, but like in some random moments. And in the whole final like sequence, he saves nobody.
Yeah. He saves one guy falling from a helicopter. That happens after the moment with Feora where she says the whole morality thing.
He like saves that guy. He saves, I think, a fighter pilot briefly.
Yeah. And I
understand he saves Lois like twice, and he saves like the oil rig. But in the actual like chaos of that finale, he doesn't save a single person, nor is it even brought up that that's something he should maybe try to do.
Yes.
Which I did write down a list of things he destroys in that sequence.
Do it. Let me know.
So
I couldn't tell.
So obviously, and so to be fair, because there's a lot of destruction at the end of this movie, right? When they get into the fight with the Kryptonians.
Is there?
And that. Yes.
Oh.
No, not at all.
Did some things break in Man of Steel?
Yeah. A single glass, and then he saw the monolith.
There you go.
Spoilers. But no, so to be fair for this list that I did not factor in anything where a Kryptonian takes Superman and uses his physical body to like destroy things, because I didn't think that was fair.
Totally. Sure.
But things where he just sort of, whether he's not thinking or because he really wanted to, where he actively destroys things.
Nice.
So obviously we have the truck from the bar, the one trucker guy who's like a douche. Which, I guess that's
well deserved.
I guess it feels well deserved, but that guy doesn't own the truck. A company owns that truck, and an insurance company's gonna have to pay it out. So it's kind of like, got him? I don't know. Like,
but is it a twofer? Because he also got a big company.
He does have a big company, so it's true.
That's okay.
You know what? You're right. I guess we're fine with that one. But I will say, I don't know if it really gets the guy. Which,
sure.
Actually, I remember you brought this up, the truck scene. We were talking about Superman 2 and like beating up the bully in the bar. Do you want to compare that for like 2 seconds before I go on this big list?
I don't like either of them. I'm not really a fan of either of them.
And why is that?
Because it's too petty.
It's super petty.
I think it's a little petty. And not to say that Superman
not even
can't
pun intended. It is. It's kind of petty in the way that I don't think
human emotions. But
it is. It's just like that thing of like it's petty in the way that I don't think works for who Superman is. Like that's just not his thing. You know, he really is the guy who can like. These things don't bother him the way that they like, and it's like the things that bother him are more.
A little more, to be honest.
Yeah, I guess because he's not like oh, I got like my powers back. I'm gonna dunk on you now.
Yeah, the Superman 2 one is like, well, you kicked my ass when I didn't have powers. Now I have powers. It feels a little like
he's like,
that feels a little off. Like the idea of it's just like I can't do this to you in public, but like I'm gonna fuck up your truck. Yeah. Like I'm okay with that.
Yeah, we're okay with that. But okay, so we have the truck, and then basically once the fight starts, he runs Zod through a giant silo, which explodes pretty dramatically. Probably didn't have to destroy that. Yep. Probably could have just flown Zod right into the dirt. I think with that strength, I think would have been hurt.
Punched him up. Could have gone up.
Could have gone up. Could have. I think there's a couple things he could have gone into instead of the silo.
Yeah.
They land in a gas station. They destroy that. He's like actively flying Zod into that gas station, I think.
Yeah.
So I think that counts. They wreck an IHOP.
Yep.
Then that goes into them blowing up a train station. I think they annihilate like a tanker.
Yeah, doesn't he punch him
every
into
single train on the track? It's like one of the biggest explosions I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I think like 36 trains just go up in smoke. And I don't mean cars. I mean 36 different full trains.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Just erupt.
Yeah. Smallville is Goneville.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like really like, oh, were you guys bored for the last 2 hours? Because this is the part we really wanted to do, which was annihilate a small town in Kansas. Then there's the parking garage gets annihilated. Like Zod throws like another like
the LexCorp truck.
Yeah, it's a LexCorp trunk, and Cavill jumps over it, which I think he probably should have maybe tried to stop it or slow it down.
No, I'd put that on him too. Choice. He saw it coming.
He saw it coming. He jumped over it, and it just erupts behind him.
He doesn't even like. It's not even like a quick like, wait, what? And then he jumps. He just kind of like just
and then it's like not phased by that massive explosion. I think missed opportunity would have been like, oh God, people, I should maybe save a couple of them. I think missed opportunity to not do some saving in there. But
Yep.
They wreck a construction site. That whole thing gonna have to start over.
Sure.
And then
he drags his face through a building.
Yeah.
He drags Zod's face through a building.
Take that. Yeah, that's a. And then I just have a note that they wrecked a drone, but I can't quite remember
the Wayne one.
The drone. Well, that's the satellite, but I think that's Zod flying Cavill into it. I think that's a Zod, destroying.
Sure. Maybe
which I'm like, which I don't want to put that on Superman necessarily because I want to be fair.
I don't. Fuck you.
But you know what? I think, but it's also that thing of like with the amount of destruction there's just without having like a moment of him like taking in all the people in the city, like he doesn't factor that into how he fights these people at all.
Yeah,
is just a really disappointing part of this interpretation of Superman. I think because I feel like again it's just that thing of he's been very conscious of like saving people. This feels like he should be like aware of it, and he just isn't. He's just like, I gotta punch this guy as hard as I can in the face.
And I think it's tough too,
which is cool. Don't get me wrong. I like watching him punch these guys. It is awesome, but there is just a level of destruction without like even realizing it that just feels dumb to me.
It goes again. Snyder's good at action.
He's really good at it. No, he is.
But it goes outside of what I think the theme of the movie is, and I also think because it's the same level of destruction basically for like an hour straight.
Yeah.
It like I said
there
earlier,
is like no break in that action too. It is like an hour straight of like.
There's not a lot of levels. If the fight between like the Kryptonian soldiers was basically Superman like having to like catch glasses as they're falling.
Yeah, the Jackie Chan save the base kind of thing.
If it was that, and it was him constantly trying to save people as they're destroying Smallville, and he's trying to. If it was that, if it's a balancing act. That's one thing, and then we, terraform all this other stuff.
Okay, I have notes about the terraforming device that I think factor into my everything.
Fair. But I think there's just no levels to the fights as they go on.
Basically, once it starts, it's like an 11 the whole rest of the movie.
So then, what becomes exciting becomes disinteresting.
Super. It just starts to wash over you at a certain point.
What's your problem with the world engine?
So the world. Here's my problem, right? they don't need to kill Superman to get the Codex. He could literally give it up willingly if he wanted to.
Sure.
So a terraforming device changes the environment to make it more suitable for their world, right?
Yes.
Why not go to Mars and just start over there?
Why is it Earth?
Yeah, why Earth? Because they literally say in the thing that it's changing the size of the planet.
Yeah.
To better match it. And like something like Mars is close enough and already similar enough in like size that if you're gonna like redo it anyway, you could do it. And I think you can get away with the fact that Zod is just really has it out.
I was gonna say
for Jor-El
I think
and being
it becomes
like,
that.
yeah, you like it here? Well, it's mine now. Like I don't really have a problem with that. But it's just that thing of like, it's not like it comes up for Clark and his decision making on when and where to do it. He's just like Krypton had its chance, and then just like poof,
yeah,
and annihilates annihilates all hope of ever like bringing back his people.
Sure,
but it's like to me, it's like that's not within the stuff that's been set up. That isn't really a choice he should have to make. It's not like it really makes sense for him to have to make that choice. So it's just like another thing that's like thrown into the movie.
Sure, yeah.
And you're expected to just like
be affected by it, have it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just like it. So I think the World Engine is very cool. I think the fight with it's really cool, but it's one of those things that's it's also unnecessarily complicated. Of like you know, like it's just like if you have a planet where you could become a god, why would you even bother terraforming it if you could become more powerful?
I also think the sequence of the World Engine where I have a bit of a problem with it is there's this idea that Lois says of like, if it's trying to make Earth like Krypton, then hypothetically won't you be weaker around it?
Doesn't really come up, does it?
It doesn't.
No.
I guess she was wrong.
I guess so. I guess it was just a guess.
Because like I guess it's hard for him to look up, but I take that more as just there's a fucking beam.
He's in a vestibule of gravity
that
is being hurtled back and forth through the planet. It's just like which also that sequence though where he's at the bottom of it and
that's great.
Incredible, the most Superman thing I've ever seen.
Well, can I give a note of what I think would make it better?
Yes.
Is if his flying was bad. I think if hypothetically if it makes it more like Krypton, lean into that. Yeah. Show what makes Superman Superman, that it's not the powers, it's his will.
No, yeah,
and his integrity of like if he is starting if it's like almost a parallel of the first flight where he can't do it and you can feel his body pushing himself, you know what I mean? Like almost like a fish trying to swim to the top of the water.
Yeah.
Like if he's pushing himself into the World Engine as opposed to just rocketing into it, the effort is there and there's a little bit more tension of is Superman gonna make it?
Yeah.
Because he's like they do a version of this when the ship is sucking everything into the Phantom Zone.
Yeah.
And he's holding Lois.
He's kind of silly in that shot.
He's kind of pushing back a little bit, but I would almost say that moment should be stretched out and moved to the World Engine set piece. If I think you can get rid of it entirely there if you add it and make it more of a moment at the World Engine.
Yeah.
Because then once he's done like doing the world's, you know, once he's like looking up with his neck, like once he's like done up there, he kind of he does it.
He just does it, yeah.
I
love you know shows. I grew up on Dragon Ball Z, right? You know, when someone gets like beat down and then they're like they harness the energy to do the thing. But yeah, the like actual like mechanics of watching it are just like could be a little bit more nuanced.
It's just not as I don't think it's as tense.
It is that thing of like it goes from what's he gonna do and then he just does it.
Yeah. If you're going to propose the idea of this will make you weaker, it should.
Yeah.
I don't think it does.
I don't think it does. And it's just like everything building into him getting caught underneath the thing it's not really like a scene. It's just things happening very loudly.
Yeah.
You know, and then he gets stuck there. But that moment of him trying to like actually like lift his head up is, I think fits in the theme of like hope quite nicely.
Yeah.
But then it's undercut almost immediately at the end of the Zod fight, you know?
Yeah, which again, Zod fight's cool, big punches, all that stuff is cool. But kind of the main thing, I'll throw out real quick. The where did you train on a farm? 10 out of 10 line.
10 out of 10 delivery.
Very good. God bless you, Michael Shannon.
The way he just shakes his armor off.
Love the detail of the steel beam as Clark lasers it, that it gets shorter, right, as he swings. I think that's fun. But I think the Zod death.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about
as much as we don't want to.
Let's talk about everybody.
So what I was saying earlier with where I have a problem with it is that once Zod dies, Clark gives that guttural scream, right? Which I like as a moment. And the idea of it's like, I did something I didn't want to have to do, and now I'm changed. My problem is that the next scene is him being like jokey with the general.
Yeah.
General Martian Manhunter, if we want to reference that. Whatever.
Swanwick. Yeah, it is him. I thought maybe it was Christopher. Is it Maloney?
No, Christopher Maloney is the guy.
Maloney before I butcher
I think it's Maloney.
Okay, yeah, the guy from Law and Order.
Yeah. And Happy.
And Happy.
A show that we like.
Good show. I actually haven't seen. I've never seen season 2.
I didn't either. I just saw this in first season.
But
General Swanwick.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of the actor. Who goes on to play Martian Manhunter in the Snyder Cut.
Yeah, a detail I don't really like.
I think he's good casting for Martian Manhunter, but I think
great casting, but I think it makes him look really dumb
as Martian Manhunter.
Probably.
Is my thought.
Yeah.
But is that it doesn't feel like the rest of the movie takes place in the aftermath of that decision.
It's Harry Lennox.
That's what it is. Harry Lennox. Good actor.
Great actor. Yeah. Great.
But yeah,
actor.
Once he does the death, I don't feel like we really like that.
They don't go back to it. It just happens.
Like it should be. We need to hear more after that.
That
doesn't do it for me. We need a little more.
One of the things that frustrates me the most about the neck snapping, like let's just say you go with it, right? Okay, even though I don't really like it as like a plot device.
Sure.
Let's just say you do it. The whole reason he's forced to do that is because he's trying to save a family, and we never cut back to find out if they're alive.
That is also true.
So we don't even know if it's worth it that he snapped the neck.
Yeah.
And it's like that thing of like, I feel like that moment would have not been so controversial had like, because there's like a little kid in that family. If one of the little kids came over and was just like, thank you. Or if like the mom and the dad were just like, thank you, you saved our children.
Sure.
Like something that like brings it back to like Mom, Pa, Kent of like, yeah, you did, you had to do this horrible thing because you were backed up against the wall. Even though I think the whole point of Superman is that he would find a way out of that. Like, is like the point. But like, let's just say you do it. There's other ways to tie that back into it, and they just don't go back to it. It's just a thing. It just feels like someone said, "Wouldn't it be great if he had to do it and he had to snap his neck?" Like, it just feels like guys smoking cigars, like saying like, hyper masculine shit they want to see.
Zod, such a fun thing to have happen.
Yeah.
There's a moment in that final fight where Zod says, "This will end with one of us dying."
Yeah,
like this is how this ends, Clark. To which in my head I thought, boy, I wonder how Superman's gonna find a way out of that.
Yeah.
Zod was right.
Could have Indiana Jones it.
It's basically at the end of the day,
his own hubris gets him.
But yeah, it's like at the end of the day, it's like I guess okay, yeah, Zod, I guess you're right. Like someone does have to die.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's oddly very dour. And then for the movie to do the whole
movie basically.
but it's like okay, if you're gonna do that, then like reckon with that shit instead of the next scene having. Which is a scene that I don't hate, but the fact that it just follows this Zod death of Cavill doing the whole, I grew up in Kansas, like all that stuff.
Yeah, he's pretty nonchalant about killing a man.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, I guess this didn't really bother him, which it doesn't, because in BVS, he throws a guy through a brick wall.
Really has no problem murking a bitch.
Yeah, so it's like, again, it's like, if you're going to do it, then I want to see you do it.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like they do these things that really just kind of spit in the face of like what Superman is. And then, like, they don't actually run the ball all the way. They don't actually do these things. They've just unnecessarily complicated everything.
And I know that there are some people with certain, like, and I would be more open to this argument for if we were talking about BVS. But I know people will be like, well, it was an arc. He had all these things planned out. I'm going to call a little bit of bullshit on that.
Even when hearing the arc, it doesn't make sense.
Well, also because, when they were originally developing Man of Steel 2, a direct sequel that then became BVS.
Yeah.
And then they also were considering having the Batman in BVS be Bale.
Yeah.
So it's like,
this was originally supposed to be tied to the Nolan
this
trilogy.
Is all charted out at this point.
It's not. It's
so it has to exist within its own confines.
Yes.
Which in this sense, I don't think it does.
I don't think it does.
But yeah, so he talks to the general. He says, "You're gonna have to trust me." Feels like a moment that should be the end of the theme, which it just doesn't really land. There's a little joke about one of the soldiers thinking that Superman is hot. I agree.
We agree.
We're all on board with this.
I don't know that this is the time and place for that scene. That scene just feels like a little silly.
It feels like it's in a different movie a little
bit.
Well,
it feels like
for
something
a movie
that's
been
feels
so
like something
humorless.
For a movie. Yeah, exactly. For a movie that's been devoid of even smiles for the most part. Like it's just like that joke feels like something from like Iron Man, not this.
Yeah.
And so it's I don't really have a problem with the joke itself. It's just even its placement in this is so
I do like
bizarre.
Swanwick's nod when she says that because
He's
it's like
yeah,
him being like
hot.
I also do think he's hot. Yeah, fair enough.
We have to agree.
But
dude's double cheeked up on a Sunday.
It's true. And then he joins the Daily Planet.
I don't know how he does that.
Yeah.
Like in the original one, you have the idea you can. Yeah, like he's no college education apparently. Like dude, I can't even get a film internship without going to like an accredited university. I don't know how he did that.
Yeah. What do you think of the line "Welcome to the planet"?
I don't hate it, but I don't understand the power of it being the last scene in the movie.
Well, it honestly it feels
like
little
welcome
bit...
to the planet, and then he smiles, and then it cuts. Like it's like this. What?
It feels a little.
The whole origin story of Superman, but it really is the origin story of Clark Kent.
My thing with it is this is not the first movie to do it. The movie I'm going to reference, but it's like the Uncharted thing.
Oh God, I still haven't seen Uncharted.
Where it's like the movie ends with them being like, and the next one's going to be an Uncharted movie. Yeah, you know what I mean? Where they're like, oh, don't worry, we're gonna do all the Superman's like Superman dynamics in the next one, and it's like, motherfucker, I wanted it now. It's like I like don't like you know what I mean? Like it feels a little like wait for Superman 2, which is unfortunately a movie that we don't really ever get.
We're not gonna.
And then
very unlikely at this point.
A Man of Steel 2?
Just in terms of production stuff, yeah.
Not happening.
Yeah, probably not.
Will not happen.
A boy can dream, Matt. Don't crush my dreams.
But, well, hey, let's play into those dreams because that is exactly the question that we're going to ask right now.
I've just sent in my my numbers because I forgot to do it at the beginning of the episode. But
I am sending in mine. Yeah, overall, before we say our specific, we need one score, and we say kind of our specific yay or nay towards a Man of Steel 2. Overall, look, there are stuff that I like in this movie. I feel like we talked a lot
about like the good stuff. Do you want to like quickly rattle off some stuff you really like?
Okay, I think the performances are really good. I think the score is great. I think the suit is good.
I think the suit. I really like the suit. I think it's a shade too dark.
I don't love the no S on the back of the cape.
Yeah,
I really like that detail.
I love the S in the back of the cape. I am okay for this version not having it.
Sure,
but
I think cast good, score good. I think the
Dorito-ness is pretty good.
Cavill, stunning to look at and a good actor. Like I like him a lot.
I don't
feel bad that he was so
his
underserved.
Performance in this movie, but mostly because I feel like he's just standing and trying to look as cool as possible. I feel like the moments where he is like acting, I feel like he is, but I feel like they're trying really hard to make him brood in places where I don't know that Superman would brood.
Yeah.
And so I feel like it just ends up being kind of a very like sterile performance. But like I've seen him do amazing things. Like he's so good in Mission Impossible. But
we've got he's so good. We've talked about that in another episode.
That's a different episode. Go check out Fallout Mission Impossible. That's a really fun episode.
But so to talk about the We Need One score, which we now have in from our wonderful producer.
Yes.
It's the culmination of our 3 scores. If it's 5 or below, it's a no. If it's 6 or above, it's a yay.
Yeah.
And maybe if there's ever...
And again, we are like sort of excluding the idea of like... We're pretending for 2 seconds that it hasn't got the sequel, and we're just justifying the idea of doing another one.
The total out of 10 for us is a 5 out of 10.
5 out of 10.
Which is a no. Technically,
because there's a 5 and higher. Or is it
5 or below? Because 1 through 5 and 6 through 10 are both increments.
So 5.1 would be a yes, but
yes,
but a raw 5, no.
Or you could say if we do like a 5.5, if we like round up, round down. You know what I mean?
If
it's 5.4, you round down to 5. It's a no. If it's a 5.5, you know what I mean?
I like that.
Something like that.
We're finding these rules as we go. Strapping guys.
And also, it's not. We talked on narrative runway. There's a little bit. There is that
Yeah, obviously,
in the sense
it's
of
a comic book character. You kind of have the built-in lead way of doing sequels and stuff. But how do we feel about this version of Superman?
I think it's just inconsistent.
It's super inconsistent,
and that shows.
It is. It takes a long time to build to him becoming Superman, and then even when it does declare him as Superman, I don't really feel like he's doing any of the things that make Superman Superman.
Yeah,
you know. And then he's barely Clark Kent too. Like it's just like kind of Clark Kent name only in a lot of stuff, especially at least by the end of it, you know.
Yeah. I don't get a sense that he's doing anything new as Clark Kent.
No, he's not. He's just doing exactly what it is. So it's like his character doesn't really have a growth. Sorry, people of Twitter. Him getting better at using heat vision does not count as a character arc. I'm sorry.
It can be.
That is not emotional growth. That is just skill. Which is cool. I'm glad gets better at it, but that's not what we're talking about here. You know,
I'm not particularly interested in seeing how him and Lois develop because I don't think the relationship is very good.
It's not particularly earned. They basically their whole relationship is built on, essentially 20 minutes of interaction. Spaced out over basically. Like 9 months, probably.
Again, I don't hate this movie. My letterboxed out of 5, I give it a 3. Like, I like parts of it. I don't hate watching it, but I just look at it and I just see something that it's like I'm almost more frustrated about what the movie is trying to be because I like what it's trying to be. You know what I mean? Like my frustrations come from I'm like, okay, but do the thing you say you're doing.
Exactly. It's butting up against itself.
Because you're not I don't think you're doing it.
No.
But listen, love Cavill. If we ever get a crisis one day,
it'd be so cool to see him come back.
It'd be great. Like I think we've said before, like I see these movies kind of as like the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies, where I'm like, there's some good stuff here, but we're all kind of being underserved, and I think Cavill could have been and is to some people, and props to you, like an amazing Superman in a different way. And as much as I'm bummed to have seen him leave, I was excited when he was announced to come back, and they were like, we're gonna do Superman, and I know he loves the character so much, and I believe all of that, but I just think, I just don't think it clicks for me, and as bummed as I am to see him go, I'm excited that we're starting fresh.
Yeah.
It's been so long.
Yeah.
This movie's 12 years old.
It is 12 years old. I think we just never really, whatever they think they were trying to set up, they never really capitalized on.
Yeah.
And it's just, I'm very glad to get a fresh start on this one.
Yes. Which
going into the next iteration. So
I can't wait, because next week we will be discussing.
Next week we'll be talking about
Superman,
James Gunn's Superman
2025, baby.
So I guess that's it for this episode. Any final thoughts?
Any final thoughts? Please don't. Just because we don't agree doesn't mean that you have. Please don't yell at us.
Again, you're allowed to disagree with us. Just be nice in the comments. I know this. People are very passionate about this one.
Yes,
and you are entitled to your opinions on that. This is just
we discussed
feelings on it. We've just had these feelings for a very long time, and
look, anyone who likes the Snyder, I like some of the Snyder stuff. I think Zack Snyder's Justice League is it's objectively better to the 2017
still has
one.
Its flaws, but I think still it's still, I think, the best of the stuff that we got out of this.
It's certainly my favorite of the Snyder movies. Yeah. But look, if this stuff works for you, good for you. I'm totally happy for you, and I would love to know why it works for you. I just see things that for me it doesn't work.
Yeah,
it doesn't work for me, and that's okay.
Yeah,
but also, people got to move on.
Yeah, people do need to move on.
It's been 12 years since this movie. The Snyder Cut was 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah. Like Justice League 2017 was almost 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. Like we just have to let it rest.
I think so. Yeah,
is my thing.
But yeah, so next week,
Superman the movie.
James Gunn's Superman. I guess we'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, we'll see you in the next one. Up, and away.
I will find him.
Thank you for listening to We Need One More.
Be sure to follow us on socials like TikTok and Instagram at WNOM Podcast to stay up to date on upcoming episodes.
And feel free to join our Discord community where you can share your thoughts on the movies we're watching together. That's going to be at WNOM Podcast server with the link in the bio.
Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. That's the best way to support the show and to let us know that you need one more.
We'll see you next week. This podcast is produced by Pilot 9 and 9 Ball Creative.